I do genuinely swallow almost every piece of gum I've ever had in my life.
That's so funny.
that might be my red flag.
Will swallow the gum.
Depending on the person who may not care. But,
It doesn't matter.
anywho, yeah, so that was a really fun tidbit that happened to me. Okay, well, it's
Well,
fine.
I guess we should get to our...
It must not be important.
Let's get to our chapter.
Okay.
Let's get to our... Guys, we're finally here.
Hi.
Ding, ding, ding.
Hello.
Hello. I'm Orja.
I'm Colleen.
I
Welcome.
got a haircut.
She did. She did get a haircut. I'm Tanner.
Yes. Look at this.
I'm glowing.
Yeah. Ooh, meat and cheese. My favorite thing.
We were just given food.
We were given food. That's not stable. Just hand it here.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Joel.
Thanks. Ta-da.
Okay.
I'm going to put it on
Actually,
the floor.
very well arranged.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to hop into the chapter recap.
Yep.
Alrighty.
Guys, Colleen is doing a chapter recap today.
Look at me. If you were here a long time ago, I did used to do them, and then we took a break, and now we're back.
Yep.
So technically, we actually both prepped this one,
We did, which is really funny.
which we've never done before.
Chapter recap. Woo
Okay, woohoo! I was pulling up my first note here, so we're not fumbling quite as much. Okay, let's go. So, chapter 51. This is the right chapter, right? 51?
Yes.
Okay, I actually had to triple check it when I prepped. Okay, chapter 51. So just a little recap tidbit. So this Feyre saved Rhys, shoved her blood in his face to save him because she's got healing blood. It sounds insane. It's true.
It's true.
And the cereal, the cereal that they are, told Feyre that Rhys was her mate. And she had a meltdown.
She did not react well.
Correct. She had a full-blown meltdown and basically forces him to winnow them away. And that's where we pick up. So Rhys is barely alive. Literally barely conscious.
Half dead.
He somehow, because he's Rhys,
Rhys.
winnows them back to the Illyrian camp and plops them right outside of the little stone cottage, straight in the mud. Not she was like, I think he was aiming for the house. We didn't get in there. Moore and Cassian just hanging out in there, sees Rhys, sees Feyre, not happy. And they're like, hey.
What happened?
What's going on? And Moore's basically like, and Feyre looks at Moore and says, take me away from here immediately. And Moore's like, because of course, she sees Rhys literally half dead. And Feyre's like, take me away now. And Moore's like, I mean, okay.
I'm sure.
If that's what you want. So basically, they winnow away. I'm going to say whisk away, but they winnow away. And she takes her to this little cabin up in the mountains somewhere. We don't really know where. It's a mountainous, cabiny area. It's probably not too far from the war camp, but it could be farther. We don't really know. And she walks in and she's like, yeah, no one can get in, anyone except family.
She's like, you're allowed.
And Feyre walks in and she's like, is it because he's my mate? And she's like, yeah. So did he tell you or did you figure it out? And she says, no, the cereal told me, which I also don't think Moore knows.
Moore did not, yeah. She's like, I'm sorry, what?
She was kind of more casual about it than I expected. Everyone else, maybe the cereal just has a preference for women.
Maybe.
Because maybe Moore's like, okay, no, that's normal. I feel like Moore had the least reaction to that happening. So, okay, so she's, more chill about it. And basically Moore's trying to talk to Feyre. Feyre's not having it. Not having it all. She's like, Rhys, he had his reasons. He was worried and didn't want to tell you, but he's really happy since she's been with you. And Feyre's like, I coldly but politely told her to go away. Basically. She's like, I'm not having it. I can't do this anymore. Moore basically says, okay, well, the cabin is spelled to take care of you. We're going to do that. And she's like, I'll be back in 3 days. Have fun.
Please don't die.
Basically, yeah. Please be alive when I get back here in 3 days. I also can't imagine. I'd be like, no, come back tomorrow. I would not want to be alone for 3 days, no matter how mad I was.
I would.
I don't think I've ever been. I get mad, but mine is slow simmering. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't want to be alone with my anger, but I'm also a verbal processor, so.
I think about everything in my head.
Oh, no,
it's all in my head.
I'm an external girly.
I'm crazy. It's all good.
And that's basically the end of 51.
That's it.
That's all that happens. She literally dumps Rhys in the mud and says, peace.
Yeah.
That's it. So.
I don't know if you wrote this in your notes, but that brings us to part 3.
I did not specify that,
The
but
House
it
of
is
Mist.
part 3.
Yeah.
Yes. Which I did physically read these, but because I do such an audiobook thing, like, chapter markers aren't really, like, an important thing in audiobooks. I just kind of keep going.
That's true.
So I don't think about that. But, yes, it is part 3, which does take a turn. It's, like, a very clear, it's a very clear turn.
It is.
Just by the way, just a head warning, these are the chapters that everyone talks about in these books.
Yes.
If you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
We will also tell you before we get there.
Yep.
I have a funny story about that later, by the way.
I'm excited.
Okay, so now on to chapter 52. So Feyre's like, yeah, I'm gonna take a bath, which is fair. I am a bath girly.
Me too.
I love a good bubbly bath.
Ugh, it's the best.
And so she's just like, yeah, like I'm warm and I'm clean and this feels great, because she's also been unwashed for 3 days, which is interesting knowing what happened in the last set of chapters.
Yeah, that's
like,
very
oh,
true.
Interesting. Okay. And basically she's like trying to take the bath, and basically the idea of mate and being mated is just haunting her. She's just like, mate. This girl has a problem with like repetitive thinking.
Yeah.
Cyclical thinking. There we go.
She definitely spirals.
Correct. Yes. She kind of goes around and around and around. She talks about, though, that she feels a bit relieved at the same time, because if she left Tamlin for her mate, she kind of knows that in the broader Fae culture, they're going to view her differently, and it's like less of like a sin, if that makes sense.
I think, explains why she can't deny her feelings. She this is why
it's not just sexual attraction.
Right.
There is something deeper, a deeper connection going on here than that. And so then I have a note to read note 1 on page 504, which I pulled up. And I just thought this was really interesting. Basically, so this is right after. She's like, yeah, only knowing my true mate would do the trick. And she goes, I was not a lying piece of traitorous filth. Not even close. It just made me, like, really sad for her, because that's very clearly what she said, that, like, traitor, but, like, lying piece of traitorous filth
That's
is
what she
very
thought of herself.
aggressive to me, and, like, very bad self-talk. No one is traitorous filth.
Yeah.
Please don't think that of yourself.
Yeah, don't think that of yourself.
Yeah. So then she keeps going down this spiral, and she's like, I wonder if he hates being my mate. Like, if he doesn't feel like he has a choice, which this kind of gets into that whole concept of, like, is it a choice, is it not, kind of thing. And then she's like, well, what if he's indifferent to me, even? Like, what if he actually is just, like, kind of whatever about it? She's like, he let me, be with Tamlin for months, and then, like, did he only come to my wedding as, like, a self-serving thing, or did he actually come to save me, like he said? Like, she's going through all of these, basically every single part of their,
like, their entire relationship.
Yes. And then she kind of moves into, and this is, like, kind of the second, like, quote note that I have, because I thought this was interesting. She moves into her thoughts on not telling her. And I think the way that she words this makes a lot of sense to me. Because, like, if you watched the last episode, we had a lot of feelings about her.
So many.
Okay. Oh, it was actually, like, the next page. Okay. So she goes into, it didn't excuse his not telling me, didn't excuse the recent weeks when I'd hated myself so much for wanting him so badly, when he should have told me, but I understood. Which is kind of what we said and what we thought. But it was more about him watching her spiral about it.
Yeah.
And not telling her that I think upset her more than...
Which, like, to be fair,
yeah.
very upsetting.
Correct. Yeah, and, like, clearly trust is her thing. They talked about it. Yep. So I understand it was valid to a degree. I still think she overreacted.
I do too.
I still think it's an overreaction. We can get more into it now that we have a little more context of, like, truly how much she overreacted.
Yeah.
So then she's also sitting there, so she's just going down the list, right? Going down the list of people that she's upset about. She can't decide if she hates Mor and Amren for them also knowing and not telling her. And she's like, I understand that Rhys told them not to tell me and they were respecting his wishes. And so she kind of seems to, like, forgive them, like, relatively quickly.
Yeah.
I did make a specific note that says I think that might mean she should give Lucian some leeway. If she's allowed to give Amren and Mor some leeway, maybe Lucian should give a little bit more than she's giving to him.
I do not disagree.
Yeah. This, again, defending him. But also at the same time, I think he needs someone to defend him because no one else is.
I think he does, too.
Bless his soul. Okay.
Yeah.
So she's continuing, and she's like, oh, no. she's like, okay, he's my mate. And she goes, I ran away like a coward. Like, she's kind of now like, okay, like, she's kind of starting to accept it, right? And she's like, I did the same thing that I told him I would never do. I told him I wasn't afraid of him. I told him I wouldn't run away from him. Basically, every, like, bad thought that he ever had about himself, she did. The moment that someone wanted to be intimate with him, she ran away.
She confirmed all of his, like, self-hatred thoughts.
Correct. Yeah. And she's just like, She's like, oh yeah, this one. I think this is pretty close to a direct quote. She demanded honestly and really didn't give him a chance to explain.
Yeah, I think that is like a direct quote.
Yeah, which I was like, that's true. Like, if you're going to demand that of somebody, then expect it to be straight and honest. Which, I mean, I guess technically he didn't tell her, but he tried.
He did try.
He tried.
It's not his fault that he was shot through with ash arrows.
Hey, rat. So, basically, she's like... So all of this is happening, like, through the night into the second day. So now we're in her second day in the cabin. And she's like, maybe I shouldn't have left in a rage, because now she is bored out of her mind. Completely bored out of her mind.
Can I read what I wrote?
Please do.
Part? Okay, so she's bored out of her mind. So, fueled by boredom, she decides to snoop the house and finds, in addition to weapons hidden everywhere...
Not surprised.
Half a dozen cans of paint.
Yeah. Yeah, so she's like, yeah, I'm bored. And so she finds the paint. And she also, like, makes note that it's definitely, like, a family cozy cabin. Like, it's very clearly, like, lived. And she's also curious if this is the cabin that Mor and Amren burned down in their infamous fight. But she doesn't think so because it looks worn and, like, well-loved.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever really get confirmation that it was or wasn't. I can't remember.
I don't know.
But she finds paints and literally just starts painting all day. She's just like, I'm just gonna paint. I don't think I put details of what she was painting at that point. But this is the first time that she's picked up a brush with real paints and has painted since everything happened before she went under the mountain.
Yeah. I would like to interject here.
Please do.
That canned soup exists in this world. It's described as a container of soup, but we all know it's like Campbell's chicken soup or something.
It's definitely
It's the equivalent of Valerius, like Campbell's chicken soup.
I just had a thought.
What?
Feyre could do the Andy Warhol Campbell's soup.
She could. Feyre Warhol.
She could be Andy Warhol. It's the main thing I think of when I think of soup.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I also do, so then Mor knocks on the door the next day to check on her.
It's on the third day. Feyre's covered. She, like, fell asleep in the paint.
Yeah.
Like, she's not...
She's like a little kitten who's fallen asleep in a
so,
can
like,
of
Mor
paint.
comes in and Mor just goes,
I have an excerpt to read for this.
Yeah, so please do.
So
it's really funny.
Well, so we find out that Feyre has not been painting day and night on paper. It has been on the house.
Correct. It is all over the house. There are canvases there.
Yeah. No, every surface of the actual house.
Every wooden surface she could find is covered in some sort of paint, which is such a bold move.
It's so funny.
I feel like it's a little bit as a way to get back to Rhys. Like, I'm mad at you, but look what I can do to your cabin. But also, like, she's a talented artist.
She is.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I know there's a theory that she's not. Part of it does stem from this.
It does.
From Mor.
But, okay, so Mor stepped in from the brisk spring night and let out a low whistle as she shut the door. Well, you've certainly been busy. Indeed, I'd painted nearly every surface in the main room. And not just broad swaths of color, but with decorations, little images. Some were basic, clusters of icicles drooping down the sides of the threshold. They melted into the first shoots of spring, then burst into full blooms of summer, before brightening and deepening into fall leaves. I'd painted a ring of flowers round the card table by the window, leaves and crackling flames around the dining table. But in between the intricate decorations, I'd painted them, bits and pieces of Mor and Cassian and Azriel and Amren and Rhys. Mor went up to the large hearth, where I'd painted the mantle in black shimmering with veins of gold and red. Up close, it was a solid, pretty bit of paint. But from the couch, Illyrian wings, she said. Ugh, they'll never stop gloating about it. But she went to the window, which I'd framed in tumbling strands of gold and brass and bronze. Mor fingered her hair, cocking her head. Nice, she said, surveying the room again. One last thing to add.
I'm excited.
Her eyes fell on the open threshold to the bedroom hallway, and she grimaced. Why, she said, are Amren's eyes there? Indeed, right above the door in the center of the archway, I'd painted a pair of glowing silver eyes, because she's always watching.
I can't.
That is my favorite thing.
It's so funny, especially over the bedrooms.
Yeah. But then, Mora's like, well, paint my eyes up there, too.
Yeah, she's like, I gotta know what them boys are doing up there.
And then Feyre, I think, eventually ends up painting all of the eyes except for Rhysand.
Which we get into. I do have notes on that,
okay.
Which is interesting. Yes, so she's basically like, oh, we gotta, put my eyes up there so I can also watch the boys, which is when we realize that they use this as, their hunting cabin, which is part of the reason why I think they have all these weapons hidden.
Yeah.
I also think every house that she's been in with them has weapons hidden. She just never snooped.
Hasn't snooped, yeah.
Yeah. And so they would just come up here and get drunk and hunt a week and then come back looking like they had been run through. But had a great time.
Yeah, camping trip.
Yes, yeah, it's a dude bonding, hunting, camping trip. And then she's kind of, still hasn't asked about Rhys, right, at this point. So she's like, hey, because we were also, fun fact, waiting to hear from the Mortal Queens and her sisters.
Right.
At this point. So she's like, hey, have you heard from my sisters? And she's like, yeah, no, we haven't yet. And then she's like, how's Rhys? And Moore's like, he's fine. Very mad about me not telling him where you are, but he's fine. And then she kind of pushes Moore a little bit, and she was like, hey, how was going under, back into the Court of Nightmares? Mm-hmm. And she's like, does Rhys force you to go back there really frequently? She's, clearly still trying to kind of get the measure of Rhys. Yeah. And Moore's like, oh, no, the moment that he found me, he gave me permission to slaughter everyone under the mountain. And she's like, he would not care. I could do it at any moment that I want to. She goes, I'm doing it more so we could, have, a connection. She's like, I could slaughter them if I want. And he would just view it as an inconvenience. He would be fine. Mm-hmm. So it is technically mostly her choice. Yeah. I think that gets a little bit blurred later, but it is her choice. So they also have a short conversation about her and Az.
Oh my God,
her
yes.
And Azrael. Feyre just asks. She's like, have you slept with him? Basically, it's pretty much that. It's a little bit more subtle than that, but not much.
It's very Feyre.
And she's just like, oh, no. She's like, after the whole Cassian thing, not sleeping with any more of Rhys's friends. And she's like, so you never, thought about it? And she was like, it's not because of me. Which I think is kind of funny. She's like, Az clearly does not think that he deserves anyone. He still thinks of himself as, the bottom filled. Yeah, she's like, I could literally stand in front of him fully not with clothes. Mm-hmm. He would completely ignore me. It's not
wah, wah.
So she's like, it's nothing to do with me. It's definitely on his end. And that's basically what I have for the end of that chapter. Do you have anything else?
Moore asks Feyre if it's really so bad to be Rhys's mate, and Feyre realizes, no, it's not. And then she leaves.
Yeah. So that is the end of chapter 52. So then we go on to, is this the long one?
Chapter 53.
Okay. So my notes on this are a little insane, so I'm going to try to summarize it a little bit.
It's short still.
Oh, it's 53? Maybe I didn't go. Oh, that's 54. Okay, never mind. 53 is the short one.
53 is 2 pages long.
53 is the short. 54 is, I was breezed past. Okay, chapter 53. So Moore does actually stay overnight.
Oh,
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
She does not leave. She stays overnight. It's literally in the next chapter that you learn. It seems like she leaves. She doesn't. She stays overnight. But she does leave the next morning. I don't think I wrote this down, but one of my favorite little tidbits about this chapter is how Moore just said she's also going to paint, but she can't. And she draws the little stick figures. Yes. And she's like, there's 3 beautiful girls with, long, gorgeous hair. And then there's the boys that somehow still look puffed up as stick figures.
It's so
which
funny.
I find really fun and funny. Very Moore. And then Feyre, this part actually made me cry when I was reading it. So Feyre's sitting there and starts imagining what her life could look like. She's like, she's looking outside and she's just like, it's really covered in snow, but it's really interesting to think about what it would look like in spring when it's all in bloom and the creek is running around and I could be sitting outside, eating lush fruits and do things, and then I could go home and I could finally go to the artist quarter and I could be with everybody. And she's like, I can finally paint and I can open up a paint shop?
Paint studio.
Paint studio. I was like, I know it's not a shop.
She calls it a shop.
Does she? Okay, that makes me feel better. Open up a paint studio and I would give away lessons for free for people like me that are broken. Mm-hmm. Which I thought was really sweet. And then she's like, and then Rhys would be there. Yeah. She finally starts adding Rhys. She's like, he would be the one feeding me the fruit and he'd be with me and he'd be laughing and he'd be joyous. And this person that she very clearly loves and wants in her life. Yeah, and she's like, and he would like, would let me use his money to open up the thing. But she goes, but I will sell my paintings to do it, made or not. Like, I'm gonna, make my own money, which I thought was really sweet. But then she's like, but I'm gonna have to fight for that because there is a war coming. Like, as much as she wants this to be like this easy, peaceful, blissful newlywed situation, that's just not realistic.
Yeah.
For her. Do you have anything else about that?
I just ended with 5 days pass.
Yeah, that was the next thing I have, yeah. 5 more days.
Every room in the cottage.
Correct. She's painted everything at this point. She's five more days. That is such a long time.
It is.
To be by yourself. And so she hears this very impatient knock on the door, and she's like, oh my gosh, Moore's here.
But
she goes,
it's not!
It's not Moore, and that's how that chapter ends.
Yeah.
That is the end of chapter 15.
That is.
Aren't you glad that's not where we ended our recap?
I'm so glad.
It'd be a little funny, actually.
It would be hilarious.
I'm a little tempted, but we definitely have a lot more to get to.
Do you want to read my chapter 54 notes?
I don't know if you saw the
yeah.
mine. This was the point where I kind of had a breakdown. We're going to switch to Orge's notes because she took actual notes of this. I basically just read the chapters into my notes. I have a good sense of kind of what this is, but essentially it's Rhys. Rhys is there.
Yay.
Yes, so we're very excited about it. And I think you have a thing, read mate. Do you have an excerpt that you want to read?
Oh, I do.
I think Orge has an excerpt she
I
wants to
do.
read. I was like, does he say mate? I was like, I think there's more to that. I do think I have.
It's Rhys. Mate, my mate. This beautiful, strong, selfless male who had sacrificed and wrecked himself for his family, his people, and didn't feel it was enough, that he was enough for anyone. Azriel thought he didn't deserve someone like Moore, and I wondered if he somehow felt the same about me. I stepped inside, holding the door open for him.
She let him in. Like a vampire.
Like a vampire.
Every time I think of permission to be let in, always vampire.
Yep.
So basically, Rhys walks in, sees the paintings. I'm assuming Moore has not told him.
Definitely not.
And because he doesn't know where she is. So he's just walking in. But also, she's painting again.
Yeah.
But also, everything is covered. She's covered in paint.
Yeah.
The entire cabin is covered in
paint. She has
paint.
become paint.
She is paint.
She is paint.
At this point. And he sees all of the eyes up there. And he's like, uh-huh. He's like, oh, I don't see mine. And she's like, yeah. Well, at first I didn't do it because I was mad at you. And then I didn't do it because then I knew if I'd sit there and just look at them and miss you. And that felt really pathetic. And I thought that was cute.
It was super cute.
I thought it was very sweet. Very sentimental. And so Feyre's like, yeah, so I'm gonna, like, give you some food.
Yeah, she's like, so you must be hungry.
Yeah, and he's like, cook? And she goes, not cook, heat up, I can't cook. Immediately. This is, once again, soup. I think
canned soup!
I think Feyre's just been living off of, which also, this place gives her what she wants, which means she's just been asking for
She just wants soup. Yeah.
So she has soup, and he's, I don't know if we know about this part or not of like accepting the mating bonds. This is kind of where we learn that essentially that's when a female gives a male food. That is when she is accepting the mating bond. So there's kind of different ways they do this. It can be really quiet between two people. Some people are like big, lavish, almost like wedding type parties to do it. There's various ways. But yeah, so he's just like letting you know that if you give that to me, that's what that means. And she's like, okay. She starts opening the soup and she goes, explain.
Yeah.
Basically like,
tell me everything.
By the time the soup's heated up, you better have a good story as to what all of this is.
All of this. Tell me everything.
And boy, does he. He goes back so far.
He goes back so far.
I remember, I forgot about this and I went to read it. It literally, the opening thing is, so the war 500 years ago. And I'm like, what does that?
What?
I'm like, what does that have to do with her? And it kind of doesn't.
Well, it kind of does.
It kind of does.
But not really.
But not really.
Yeah.
It's where he decides to start the story. So he's like, 500 years ago, I was separated from Cassian and Azriel, which we know, and his unit, I guess, essentially was captured by Amarantha. So this was actually not the first time he has seen Amarantha, which we did not know that.
We
at
did
this
not.
Point. And he tortures her for a very long time.
She tortures him.
Crap. Yes, she tortures him. He wishes he could torture her.
Yep.
She she uses, why do I keep doing that? She uses the like stone manacles that is like a Hybern specific thing, because they found the stone like really deep in the earth that nullifies their power, which is interesting, because does that mean that the cauldron didn't make that? If it nullifies cauldron powers.
That is very interesting. I don't know.
I've been curious about that. But what do you guys think? Do you think it's what it is? I'm intrigued. But it's specifically a Hybern thing. So it nullifies their powers. There's a lot of ash spikes. I don't think it was arrows. Like spikes in his wings. Mm-hmm. He's being tortured. And he's like sitting here like trying to plot to get to go away. And like Amarantha could care less about him. She's like, you're a High Lord's son. There's a lot of those.
Yeah, like whatever.
Could care less. So he's plotting her death every day, and he finally works up the courage. He's like, if I have to rip off my own wings, I'm gonna kill her. But the day that happens instead, Jurian and Amarantha have their infamous showdown.
Yes.
Which is because, and this is where we learn, that Jurian killed Clythia.
Yeah.
Which is Amarantha's sister.
Yep.
We don't know why or how that happens just yet. I don't think we get the details of like that relationship. We get that at some point.
I think we get it in book 3.
Yes, so we don't know the full story. But he apparently killed Amarantha's sister, so she's obsessed with Jurian. It looks like Jurian was going to win. He did not. So he was tortured very graphically.
For days.
4 days. I'm not going to go into it because it was gross. Mm-hmm. And then essentially Azriel and his father come and find him and rescue him. His dad, not great.
No.
He's
not
basically
great.
mad that he got caught and tells Azriel and everyone else, which is also probably the first time he's seen Azriel since the start of the war.
Yeah.
Leave those spikes in his wings, basically so he can't heal. Like, leave him permanently crippled for a while. So Rhys is forced to return home. He can't finish out the rest of the war. And he also wasn't really able to be there when the final treaty was made, and he's, like, distraught, basically, that Amarantha got off scot-free, Hybern got off scot-free, they get to leave. We also find out that Tamlin's father was friends with Hybern and with Amarantha in particular, which kind of makes sense for, like, later things that are happening.
Yeah.
So then, you know, there's some time frame. I don't know if we ever know the time frame between Amarantha coming back and the end of the war.
The end of the war is 500 years ago, or is the beginning of the war 500 years ago?
The beginning of the war was 500
beginning
years
of the
ago.
year.
And then she was there for 50 years.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a few hundred years.
I think it's a couple hundred years.
Yeah.
Now they had a little chill time. Too bad Feyre wasn't born then. So basically Amarantha comes back. And she's like, oh, we're here for trade. Like, we found the error of our ways, da-da-da. And, like, interestingly, a lot of the High Lords bought into it.
Yeah, they're like, sure.
Yeah. Tamlin and Rhys are kind of the two that are like, Also, fun fact, which I don't know how you can do this, because he's gorgeous. Amarantha does not remember Rhys. Has no recollection that they've met.
Yeah.
She only knows him as the son of the man that killed her friend. Because his dad killed Tamlin's father.
Yep.
So she's not having it, immediately set her sights on him. But he's like, oh, it's my time to get her.
Yeah,
So
he's ready.
He is ready, so he goes to the infamous party, the infamous bad party. I think we've talked about this. I don't know if it's...
We have. In the
gotten
first
into
book,
this.
they
Did we talk about it? The infamous party where all their powers were stolen. And he's, like, plotting to kill her, basically. And he didn't bring anyone with him because he didn't really want anyone else to be involved. Bad choice, Rhys.
Yep.
I get that he wouldn't want anyone else to have been involved. Still think it would have been better with at least one of the inner circle.
Just one of them.
It would have been Cassian. Cassian would have been fine.
Yeah.
Anywho, but basically, the moment she takes his power away, so he like can feel his power draining. He drinks the thing, is so busy on trying to kill her, doesn't realize what she's doing. So he does the whole thing where he
saves Valaris.
Yeah. Essentially. It's a whole long process that he goes into, but he saves Valaris, and that's when he realizes that she's like looking at him. This is where the sad bits and things happen.
Yes.
We talked about it.
Trigger warning, you know what
Trigger
happens.
warning, you know what it is. And he's like, I basically let it happen because she really didn't, which is common in these situations, didn't want me for me. She wanted me as a way to control and get back at my father, essentially, for killing her friend. So then he is going through that nightmare of a situation, and then the curse on Tamlin happens, and so he's like, my mortal enemy is now the only way that I can get out of it. And then we kind of skip ahead, basically.
Yeah, like, this is just happening for, like, almost 50 years.
And, like, he basically tricked her into thinking that he was, like, enjoying what was happening.
Yeah.
He was not.
He was not.
He was just like, I have to do this. I mean, regardless, she wouldn't have cared if he liked it or not.
No.
He just realized it was better for him if he pretended.
Yeah.
And then we kind of skip ahead to 3 years ago. When you're like, okay.
Like, oh, okay.
You're like, what was all of that for?
To give the context.
Yes.
Feyre wanted a good story.
She was like, tell me everything, and he's like, I got you.
I'll tell you everything. I was born.
That's basically what it was. He was like, so I was born. And you're like, what? So he starts seeing flashes of dreams of an unknown woman that he doesn't know. But he does realize that she's human.
Mm-hmm.
She has a note.
I'm stealing this from you for a second.
Steal it back, please.
Gleamed in his eyes, and he blinked it away. 3 years ago, he said quietly, I began to have these dreams. At first, they were glimpses, as if I were staring through someone else's eyes. A crackling hearth in a dark home, a bale of hay in a barn, a warren of rabbits. The images were foggy, like looking through a cloudy glass. They were brief, a flash here and there every few months. I thought nothing of them until one of the images was of a hand, this beautiful human hand, holding a brush, painting flowers on a table. My heart stopped. And that time I pushed the thought back of the night sky, of the image that brought me joy when I needed it most. Open night sky, stars, and the moon. I didn't know if it was received, but I tried anyway. I wasn't sure I was breathing.
No.
Because, as we know,
she painted the night
sky.
sky.
The night sky.
And she didn't know why.
Yes.
But she knew she needed to because it felt comforting because of her mate. We also learned, so basically then he starts seeing more flashes of her, and he realizes she's in the spring court. He starts like seeing things because it starts becoming more clear when she crosses the wall, basically, and realizes that she's in the spring court, and he's like, I have to find her. I have to go see her. So he realizes that they're setting up for Calamai, which is how he realizes she's in the spring court, which is how we get to the infamous meeting scene.
I have a note there too. I couldn't. It's too good.
No, it's really good. This is one of the like really interesting, sweet parts, and also very funny parts.
It's so good.
It's very good. I think it kind of breaks the tension of this kind of dark story a little bit. It kind of brings the romance back into this story that was desperately needed up to this point.
I got there and I could smell you, so I tracked that scent, and there you were, human, utterly human, and being dragged away by those piece of crap.
Yeah. It was not crap, but yeah.
People who wanted to, blah, blah, blah. And he's like telling her, he's like, I didn't even think. All of a sudden, I was just there. And then she thinks, there you are. I've been looking for you. His first words to me, not a lie at all, not a threat to keep those fairies away. Thank you for finding her for me. I had the vague feeling of the world slipping out from under my feet like sand washing away from the shore.
It's really cute. And she's basically like, oh, you were into me. And he's like, you literally thought I was the hottest man you had ever seen.
He's like, I heard you say the most beautiful male I have ever seen.
I know you thought I was hot. I also don't think I processed that he knew that.
Yeah, he did know.
So all of that happens, and he has to walk away. He's trying to walk away. He's like, I have to leave, or I'm never going to leave, and then I'm just going to take you away.
Yeah.
And it's going to ruin everything. But she actually stops him and, like, chats with him a little bit, which we know from the first book. And he's just like, oh, maybe she wants me back. Like, he's having this whole, giddy, cute little moment with himself, which he needed desperately.
He did.
So then, eventually, as we know, he comes back. And turns out it was not the extra plate that gave them away. When Rhys came back, it was the scent of Feyre.
Yep.
So their glamour worked. Rhys was not that observant. He could just smell Feyre. This is when he comes back and makes Tamlin grovel. And he's also, like, mad that Tamlin gets to have her.
Yeah.
And is his person. And then she goes under the mountain, basically. I'm really trying to get through this. It's such a long story.
It's a long story. Do you want to switch off?
Oh, we can.
Okay.
Yeah, here, I will let you continue through that section.
I also started glossing over. So.
Yeah, at that point, I was just like, gosh.
I just said, and the rest, as they say, is history. So basically, oh, shit. Hold this for a second.
Oh. Yeah, like, he basically just recaps. It's kind of the part I'm like, it's recapping everything we've already talked about. It's just putting it into more context. We're almost there. Feyre is Cassian, that part really cracked me up. I do think you should read that part because I made a note on that. We're not quite there, but yeah, do you still want to keep going?
Okay. Fine. The rest is history. He gets a fake name. He realizes that it's not her, but he thinks that she's safe. Mm-hmm. Someone else is dead, but she's safe at least.
Which, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then she's under the mountain.
She shows up. She's there.
And he's like, damn it.
He's like, why are you like this?
He finally learns her name, which is cute.
That whole section was really cute.
I know.
Please read this.
It's so
Please
good.
read this book.
So, and the rest, as I say, is history. Feyre realizes that when her human self died, and she'd held on to something that had felt like home, it was her mating bond with Rhysand.
Which she thought was their bargain.
Their bargain.
Is what she thought. Because she could tell she could see through Rhys's eyes. She knew that.
Yeah.
She just didn't know.
She didn't know,
no. Bond.
And then basically, after the bond snaps into place and Rhysand pieces out straight up, he lands in the night court and he's so panicked and unhinged that he immediately tells Mor everything.
That's the first words he says to her in 50 years.
Yeah, my mate. She's my mate.
And she's like, what?
Like, huh?
Who?
Excuse me?
You know she thought it was Amarantha. You know. That's what she thought.
She probably had like a second of blind panic, and then Rhys was like, oh, this human girl, and now she's not human, and she's in love with Tamlin, and she's gonna marry him.
And Mor's like, She's like, glad you're safe. Love you too.
Yeah.
I'm also okay.
Yeah. Right.
Something that I did think was interesting about the whole like kind of end part where Rhys is basically like, and then I felt your neck snap.
Yeah.
And he's the one that was like gripping onto her.
Yeah.
And he's like, I could tell you wanted to hang on, but was like holding on to her. And he's like, in that moment, I decided, one, Amarantha's gonna die. Mm-hmm. Which he tried. He's actually the first one that tried.
He did try.
And he's like, I did not care what I had to do. If I had to go into the minds of all of the rest of the High Lords and basically liquefy their brains, they were going to save you.
Yeah.
He's like, I didn't end up having to. He's like, I talked to them mind to mind, which explains why they all knew to just give her this power. I was very curious how they all knew that.
I was too.
It's because Rhys basically was like, hey, come on. And they were like, yeah, we probably should.
Yeah. They were shamed into it.
Including Baron.
Yeah.
Which I cannot imagine being in that man's mind.
I think that Baron only did it because the rest
everyone
of
else
them did it.
It's like, but I also feel like he's also a little bit like,
he's like, fine.
He's like, he does not like Lucian, but I do think he has a sense of duty towards Lucian enough that he's like, you saved my son.
And all of us, I guess.
And all of us. Fine. I like Lady Autumn, because Lady Autumn helped her maybe talk to him. Anywho, so I thought that part was really interesting.
And for 3 months, he's gone.
Yeah.
For 3 months, he tried to convince himself that Feyre was better off without him because she loved Tamlin and was going to marry him. Mm-hmm. But then he heard her screaming for help on her wedding day, and he was like, that's it.
He was also planning on getting rip-roaring drunk.
He was. But
Cassian had no idea why.
I feel like he was already a little drunk.
Because he forgot who he was.
He had
for like a split second. He'd started. The wedding had started. He'd started drinking that morning.
Yeah. He had started drinking that morning. And then he continues that he couldn't bring himself to force anything on Feyre after she was locked up and all of that. And so he was like, I just couldn't help but be close to you and try to help you and be with you and spend time with you and love you. And Feyre was like, you love me? And everyone in the entire universe is like, no shit.
Duh, ma'am. Duh. This man literally took so many arrows multiple times for you.
So many times.
Come on now.
Feyre realizes that she loves him too, so she sets the bowl of heated up canned soup down in front of him and tells him to eat. I'm going to hand this back to you, chapter 55. My summary is very short.
I think I'm going to read my summary for 55.
Read your summary.
Because I have a few more notes.
I just wrote, Rhys finishes his soup and Feyre tells him she loves him too and she's honored to be his mate. They get saucy on the table with the paints, yay. They have a bunch of sex and there's a lot of snarling and saying you're mine and stuff. That's all, the whole chapter at the end.
That is honestly a pretty good summary. I have a few different
Let Colleen
tidbits.
Elaborate.
So chapter 55. This is the infamous chapter, by the way. If you've heard anything about this book, this is the chapter that you've heard about. So yeah, basically, Feyre says, love you. Rhys is basically really stunned. Seems a bit stunned and basically says, you're not going to say anything? She says, I love you too. He like gets to the end of the story and he's like, are you not going to say anything? Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
I love you too. And she's like, I'm really proud and honored to be your mate, which I thought was really sweet.
Yeah.
And this was my summation of the same thing. Basically, it gets really steamy in pretty much most of this chapter. I'm not going to get into detail, but it is incredibly well written.
It is.
And if you would like to read it, please do. I will state there's a lot of paint involved.
There's so much paint.
Which I think is interesting.
So funny.
There is a really funny part. So let me see. What did I think was funny? There's a really funny part in this chapter where Rhys says he fell in love with her when he saw her making a trap for the guard. And I think you have a direct
I have a
quote
note about this. I have it. Do you want me to read it?
Please do. Yes. So we both noted this because it's so funny.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
So they're lying there after
This is their pillow talk.
after doing it a whole bunch.
Yeah. This is their pillow talk, which is so funny.
He goes, I think I fell in love with you, Rhys murmured, stroking a finger down my arm. The moment I realized you were cleaving those bones to make a trap for the Middengard worm. Or maybe the moment you flipped me off for mocking you. It reminded me so much of Cassian. For the first time in decades, I wanted to laugh. And she goes, you fell in love with me because I reminded you of your friend.
Valid.
I think that's so romantic.
I think it's so cute. I would love someone to be like, which this is also a recurring theme in my life. A lot of my friends marry men that are very similar to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've also been told I have male qualities, which is fine. But I take it as a compliment.
It is a compliment.
I think it's very fun.
Yeah.
I think the final thing that I have a little bit further on that, which I thought was really funny. And he's like, I could literally picture Cassian sitting next to me and he said, marry her, you stupid prick, or I will.
Yes.
Which Cassian, I think, would in a heartbeat.
He would.
If given the opportunity.
Yes.
He tried, actually, I think. Was like, hey.
He might have. I mean, he
We know more things later.
Yeah.
But, and then I put, there's a lot of talk about wings.
There's a lot of wing play.
There's a lot of wing talk. Which is technically really what people talk about with this book. I didn't think it was that salacious, but people
I did not
thought
either.
it was. And then we also figure out when Feyre says she knew she loved him, which I think is really interesting.
I don't remember.
Yeah, so Feyre says that she fell in love with him on Starfall, or at least she had a really good idea that she was, but she was really afraid, which that is the most romantic scene of my life.
It is.
How could she not fall in love with him?
We all fell in
forehead
love with
kiss at the
him.
end of
I
the night.
know.
So then they basically talk about there's like a few things that they could do. They could have a big ceremony. She's like, so what's next? And he's like, well, we could do this whole big ceremony. Da, 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 da. He's so focused on the mating bond.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm into about the war.
Yeah, right.
Like the war that's raging on. And he's like, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We also learned that the men get a little aggressive
Yeah.
around this time. They're very animalistic. And he's like, I might implode a little bit. Just let me know. Some men are known to, like, you know, burst whole houses apart. And she's like remembering a previous room. And he's like, hey, I know what you're thinking. I would like to think I have a little more control than that. But be patient with me.
Yeah.
I'm trying really hard.
It's basically like they get really territorial.
Like, which is very, and he's basically like, it's our animal-based instinct that is still there. Fae are much closer to the animal than humans are. Oh, yeah. And then he's also like, oh, yeah, tomorrow. Your sister's responded. We have to go see the queens tomorrow.
I forgot.
Just so casual. And she's like, why didn't you tell me sooner? And he's like, I mean, we got time.
Yeah.
I was a little busy. I was distracted.
I love that so much.
I mean, valid.
Very attractive quality.
Yeah, correct. And then then there's a very long night where Feyre literally ends up glowing.
Yes.
Like physically glowing.
Yeah.
And he's like, we gotta figure out how to deal with that. And he's like, but I do love that I can at least tell people that I literally made you glow of happiness, which I thought was really cute and funny. It's very like fun, sweet, saucy interactions that happen.
The reason people love chapter 55, which maybe let's pause. Let's save this for deep dive.
Yes, but it's very interesting.
It's so cute.
And then they do talk about conception, which I think is really interesting.
Yes, I loved that. Yes.
So she's like, hey, haven't been taking my tonic. So they have like a conception tonic or whatever. And he's like, okay, well, what do you want to do about it? Basically just kind of giving her the choice. And she's like, well, like now that I'm a High Lord's mate, aren't I expected to bear your children? And he's like, you're not expected to do anything. And he's like, I would be honored and would love to have a child with you. They're very rare amongst the Fae. They're kind of hard to conceive. But truly, the thought, especially with this mating bond being so new, the thought of you being pregnant during this war makes me absolutely want to lose my mind. He's like,
Yeah.
I don't think I would be able to focus on the war the way I need to. And she's like, okay, well then I will take the tonic as soon as we get back. Funny conversation, I feel like, when she lands. She's been like, hey, Moore, got some of that contraceptive tea. We don't really
Moore
get that.
knows what.
I feel like Moore had it ready.
She probably
Moore
did.
had it ready.
She was
knew.
ready. Yeah.
But basically, yeah. And she's just like, I want to spend time with you
Yeah.
between now and then. And he's like, great.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I have.
That's
That's
awesome.
it. That's basically how it ends.
Yay.
So there we go.
End of chapter recap.
Woohoo!
Okay, so is it Orja's corner or Colleen's corner?
I didn't necessarily prep anything. Do you?
Our corner.
Oh, it's
Welcome
our corner.
to our corner.
Do you have anything in particular that you felt strongly
Well,
about with this?
I really wanted to talk about the whole contraceptive thing and the
what you
whole thing
like.
about
Yeah.
talking about having babies.
Yes, please talk about it.
I have been married for a little over a year,
Mm-hmm.
and my brother and his wife are not having kids.
Fair.
The motions that they had to go through to convince everyone to stop telling them that they would want kids one day.
Yeah.
It literally took like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
By the time it got around to me, I think everyone has been a little scared
Fair.
to ask me if I want kids, which I will say this, I do want kids. The same thing with like Feyre, like, well, we have been together for a very long time, but we just got married.
Yeah.
You know, like we're still both kind of like figuring out the whole adulting thing. Like, I'd like to have kids, but not going to think about it for at least another 1 or 2 years, maybe 3 years even.
Yeah.
I like the juxtaposition because for me, and I'm sure for you too, very prominent in more conservative cultures.
Yes.
The thing to talk about after you get married, or in this case, when you're mated,
Which is essentially married. Like,
Yeah.
their mate is
their
that was their wedding ceremony.
lifelong partner.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Especially in the spring court, it is that very conservative culture where it's like you're getting married and there will be babies.
Like, immediately.
And I'm pretty sure Tamlin even went so far as to talk about his sons.
Yes, specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is like that.
Wild.
I never liked the male.
Yeah.
But that made me want to barf.
The way that he talks about it. Is,
Yeah.
And I understand people having a preference of what gender they would want.
Yes.
That's fair.
That's fine.
I think some, especially women, are like, I will be much better to raise this gender than this one. And
Yeah.
it can be varying depending.
I've said both are nightmares, so really, I guess whatever.
No, I'm not that concerned. I'm also not necessarily planning on having kids.
Yeah.
My thought process on this is I'm fine either way. If I don't have kids, great. If I do, I love kids. I'm not against it. Not necessarily leaving it up to my partner, but if my partner's like, I really want kids, great, I'll have some.
Right.
If they don't, I'm just kind of
Having discussion is important.
yes.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a part of consent that maybe a lot of books don't cover and that a lot of people don't think about. Probably should have had the conversation before they started.
Yeah.
I do think it was a little late.
But,
I mean, there's ways that clearly it didn't have to be for them.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe better to have that conversation before you engage in activities.
Yes. No,
So
I agree.
everyone knows what's happening.
Yeah.
And you have a clearer picture.
It's important to have the conversation, especially I will put this out there. For me, we, were intimate before we got married.
Sure.
And so before we got married, there was absolutely no question at all. I will not have children. It's not happening.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
I understand.
Not happening. And then after we got married, or when we were engaged, we started talking about the future and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was a conversation that we are still having.
Yeah, well, because it's an ever-flowing conversation depending on what your life is.
Yeah. I like that it's the same way for Rhysand and Feyre. I like that they're taking the war into account too.
Which is a common thing that people have to, sadly.
Yeah. Thinking about the reason my brother and his wife aren't having kids. I will put this out there. Don't think they love kids. They enjoy children. They have nieces and nephews. My sister-in-law's sister has kids. They like hanging out with the kids for a day or two or
But, like,
babysitting,
that's
but
it.
then give them back, you know?
Please take them away.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of sacrifice that comes with
Right.
kids, which is... And
But their main reason is that they don't want to bring children into this world because the world is crazy.
it's a lot happening, which is fair.
Which is fair. I think it's very valid, and I think that it's like such a personal choice where it's like, and I think that Rhys and Feyre get it too, where he's like, I would have kids with you, but I don't think that I would be able to focus on the war, and so maybe we save this conversation for later. And she's like, oh yeah.
I also love that he gives her the option.
Yeah.
He's like, I understand it's your body, and you're the one that's going to have to bear the brunt of all of it. So, if you want to have kids, great. But if not, it's
like,
not.
it doesn't matter.
Because, like, I think that was a big conversation. Interesting, like, this has kind of come up recently, but, like, around, like, the British royal family. And, like, their marriages and how insane all of that got.
Yeah.
Because of, like, the expectations of
Yep.
you, especially if you married William, which
Oh, yeah.
the big expectation of, like, you're gonna have kids and how that's gonna work, and, like, that was, like, non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Which, again, they talked about and knew going into it.
Yes.
It was a very different situation, I think, but it's not like she went in blind. But I think it's an interesting conversation and choice.
Yeah, no, I agree. I am very happy that contraception, one, exists in this world,
It doesn't in a lot of fantasy worlds.
and two, that they actually talk about it.
Correct. And it's always something that, I know this is a very serious conversation, but what cracks me up, it's always a tea.
It is always a tea.
It's always a tea. Every time.
I know, it's so funny.
Like, I get that we're in a fantasy world, and we love it. We love a good tea.
Make it like a paste or something. I don't know.
I'm assuming it's based on the, like, Roman concept.
Yeah.
That there was this plant in Rome that is now extinct. That was that was talked about and written. That's how we know it existed. That was very good at contraception, and it got used a lot because it's Rome. I think it was Roman or Greek.
I don't remember.
I think it was Roman.
Yeah.
But basically, the plant is literally now extinct. But that was a tea. So I do think early forms of contraception were teas.
Yeah, and then you have like all of like the midwifery from like, you know, the Middle Ages and stuff, where they use like herbs that are naturally contraceptive, and they would make a blend of it and stuff like that. But
I just feel like, you know, there's other things you could do. I get that the tea is the easiest thing, and you don't really have to, like, explain how it works.
Yeah.
We all know what a tea does. We know what you do with it. So I get it. But I don't think it's a negative thing. But it is always...
It is always a tea.
In a fantasy world, always tea.
It's so funny.
Every time. Which I do love. It always makes... Like, I see it and I'm like, oh. Like, this was definitely not the first time I ran into it at all. But if it's your first time, it's very common.
It's very common to be a tea.
Yes.
Very uncommon, I feel like, for such an in-depth conversation about it. Like, I've read a lot of fantasy where they're just like, oh, I'll need to take the contraceptive potion or whatever. Yeah. And the guy's like, yeah, sure, we'll make sure you get some because he's a good romantic lead, so of course he's supportive, but that's the extent of it.
Well, her other books are basically that.
Yeah.
Especially, like, the one, which it was kind of young adulty until it wasn't, but her Throne of Glass series has something similar to that.
Yeah.
And that's basically what it is.
That's it, yeah.
Like, there's not really, like, a longer...
Yeah.
conversation necessarily until a lot later, which is about the time that I think she's writing this book as well.
Yeah,
because she was kind of writing them simultaneously. Yeah, but no, you're not wrong. You should. It's like, yeah, I'll get that for you, which I appreciate.
Yeah, thanks, bro.
Love some help.
Or like, I also like it. So like in this one, it's the woman who takes the contraceptive tea, right? But there's also I just opening it up to like the broader fantasy realm. I like when it's like optional whether the boy or the girl takes it.
So I know you just finished the series, which is why I'm going to bring this up, and I don't know if this is what you're thinking of, but I just got to that, the contraception element of Zodiac Academy.
Oh, yeah! I forgot about that!
So I finally got to book, is that a book 2 or 3?
I could not tell you.
I think it's in book 3.
I read them all in such a blur.
So I'm on book 3, but they do like a spell. That whole section was really funny.
That was so funny.
It's one of the more like, again, I think contraception is a very serious thing, but I also think there's a goofy element.
There's room for humor.
Well, so they're in a sex ed class.
Yep.
Essentially, we all know the infamous bananas from sex ed classes in movies. Mostly, I did not have a banana. I actually had very traumatizing photos of things shown on screen.
God.
Was that not what happened to you?
They didn't, okay, they didn't even use a banana. They just told us about it.
Oh, no.
It was very if you didn't know what was going on, you would not have learned anything from my sex ed class.
Oh. I feel like...
The opposite for you?
Oh, no, we weren't told how to prevent anything.
Oh, okay.
So I'm from Oklahoma, which is more of it is less of a preventative and more just abstinence only, which I understand. Let parents have that discussion. There are some people that don't want to have that with your kids. Get it. I understand. But what they did show us was female genitalia with various STIs.
No.
I am not kidding you.
What?
It was also the first time I had ever seen another female's bits.
That is so traumatizing.
And they were gnarly looking.
That is so traumatizing.
Because they like very clearly chose the most
like
insane
the worst
photos of every STI.
Yeah.
Something that I will state, and I stand by this to this day, and I have said this multiple times. Good. I to a degree appreciate that they were like, if something happens, this is what it's going to look like and you should get help.
Yeah.
They didn't really tell you how to prevent that part, just like don't do it.
Yeah.
We were also in middle school.
Yeah.
But they didn't show us the opposite. So how were we supposed to prevent getting it? If we don't know what it looked like if you were someone who likes the opposite gender.
Yeah.
We're not going to know what it looks like on that.
Yeah.
Like that seems more important to me.
It does seem more important.
Show both. Showing it to show both. If you're gonna show one, show both.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was, and we had to go to it every year.
Oh my God.
So in middle school, technically your parents could opt you out, but like it was kind of a weird thing. Like you just went to it, right? So every year we sat in a gymnasium and they projected it massive on a screen. And then 8th grade, right? You walk in, you're like, I know how this is gonna go. It's really funny to watch the 6th graders have a panic attack.
Sure.
We thought we knew. We did not.
Did they change it?
They had a birthing video.
Oh God.
Beforehand.
What? No.
And we were like, what? But the way this birthing video worked was that because we weren't expecting it. This is burned into my brain, clearly. It was a group of people standing around, like young people going, push, 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 push. So we thought it was a fight, and we're like, what is happening? And then it just zooms down, and it is a simulation of a very young girl giving birth.
Oh my God.
And I remember just being like,
wild.
All of us were traumatized.
I'll tell you right now, I've still never witnessed a birth.
I mean, it wasn't like a full. I also technically have not. It was
I'm not even close for me.
That was the closest I got. And honestly, I think that might be to this day why I am literally terrified of giving birth.
Would do it. That would do it.
Yeah.
Mayapack, middle and high school. And if you're one of my friends who went to school with me and you got something different, just let me know because it's possible that I've glossed over it in my mind.
You just blocked it out.
Just blocked it out.
That's fair.
I don't remember any sort of visual aids when talking about it. It was mostly just don't do it, but if you're gonna, make sure you're protected. This is what a condom looks like. That's it. Know how to put it on.
Yeah, that's kind of what we got. Yeah.
But nothing to traumatize us and convince us not to do it either. Literally just, hey, don't do it. It was like the Mean Girls scene where he's like, don't have sex. If you have sex, you'll get pregnant and die. That's basically what we had. So, yeah. I think that brings our corner to an end. That's all. We could just wrap that episode up. I think we're done here. No, I actually really want to talk about this section so bad.
Yes. Okay. Do we want to do the superlatives?
Yes, let's do the superlatives.
Superlatives.
Yes. Drama queen.
Feyre.
Obviously.
Feyre.
I'm going to lock myself in a cabin for 8 days and paint on everything.
I'm just saying she wasted 8 days.
She did waste 8 days. What was she doing?
She only had one. She could have had 8.
Mm-hmm. It's very true.
Just saying.
She could have.
They probably could have used it.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Honestly.
Let that, like, animalistic
simmer a little.
Through. Yeah. It's fine. I get her being mad, but, like, that's a long time.
It's a long time.
She
wasn't mad the whole 8 days.
Yeah, but fair, but she could have told more to tell Rhys where she was.
Craziest thing to happen, I'm gonna say painting Amren's eyes on the hallway between the bedrooms. Why?
Why does it have to be in the hallway?
Why?
It's so fun. Amren, thriving, loves that.
Oh, yeah.
Amren thinks it's so funny.
For sure.
All of the rest of the boys They're probably like, can we just take the eyes down?
Yeah. Like, please, just not the eyes.
Everything else, totally fine. Can we take the eyes away? Please.
Hacks me up.
I am begging you. Yeah, that's the only 2 things we have, right? Mm-hmm. Drama queen, and then that.
Okay. We can just put a blanket favorite is dum-dum statement.
The whole chapter.
The whole, the first 3 chapters. 51 through 53. Dumb. So dumb.
Correct. Honestly, including painting on every single surface
what?
of a cabin that is not technically yours.
The worst house guest ever.
I guess it is technically hers at this point.
I guess it is technically hers.
She hadn't accepted the bond yet, but I think at that point
honestly,
ownership would be hers.
Thinking about it from that perspective, I do love a confident woman who's like, I'm painting this house. It's my house now.
I mean, I guess in theory it's not like you can't take paint off.
Yeah, that's true.
It's pain, but you can.
But they have magic.
Oh, that's true. I forget about that.
Yeah.
That would have been really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, deep dive discussion. What do we want to talk about first?
Good golly almighty. The Feyre of it all?
Yeah.
And I know we talked about it a little bit.
I'll let you open.
But we talked about it some last chapter recap.
We did.
I understand her being upset. I can't imagine the person that is destined to be my soulmate looking at them nearly to the point of death, dropping them in the mud, not asking anything about their well-being, and just winnowing myself away.
No.
And not having any follow-up.
It feels, I'm just going to say this, internet don't hate me, it feels very Tamlin of her.
It does feel very Tamlin of her.
Yeah.
She's throwing a fit and leaving.
Yep.
Which she does get to.
She realizes
she
it.
She realizes she messed up pretty bad. Probably not as apologetic as she should be.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time...
Yeah.
I understand her being mad.
Yeah.
I do.
I do too. I get it.
Yes.
That level, though...
Every time, from the first time I read this, I thought it was an overreaction.
Yeah. Especially because him winnowing, not only is he half dead, they have a track on his magic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Feyre,
what are you doing?
Feyre, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
She just, I think this is a classic case of Feyre is not used to Fey emotions. And they're intense.
That's a good point.
And I think it gives her a little bit more perspective. And I think that is eventually a little bit why she gets to the point where I think it gives both Rhys and Tamlin some perspective. Mm-hmm. Tamlin was born Fae, so he should have figured out how to control them.
Yeah.
They're new for Feyre.
Yeah.
She's used to being able to be angry and not it be to this level.
Yeah, that's a good point.
She's never had to dampen her emotions.
And like I said, I know that there's a discussion whether she's a Sagittarius or Capricorn because she's a cusper. Mm-hmm. But when I get angry, I get really freaking angry.
Yeah.
And then it disappears almost as quickly as it comes on.
That is fair.
And so if you're thinking about Fae emotions, and then I'm like, oh, I got too angry, I'm sorry. But for me, it lasts maybe half an hour at the most.
I simmer.
Yeah.
I'm a simmerer. I will plot your downfall.
I love that.
Yeah.
I plot your downfall in the 5 minutes to 30 minutes that I have to be angry, and then I'm like, oh no, you're being too much. Were we having this discussion?
We were having this discussion right before
where it's
we started.
Where you're when you get really mad at someone, you're dead to me, they're dead to you forever.
Basically,
right?
Yeah.
So I have that too, but instead of when I say if you're dead to me, you just simply don't exist. Not a single thought is spent on you anymore any longer.
Oh, I wish. No, I constantly am just not that I hope bad things happen to you, because I don't think that's the right way to think about it. But I don't know if you'll know this or not. Have you ever heard the song "I'll Pray for You"?
No.
So there's the song. So I am a religious person. I think we've gone over that. And I grew up religious. And so there was this song that I think was a popular song. It was a country-esque, country pop song. And it is so funny. If you don't know the song, please listen. I will send it to you afterwards. But it goes, I'm a good church boy. I'll go into church and I'll pray for you. I pray your brakes go out running down a hill. I pray a flower pot falls from the windowsill and knocks you out like I want to.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah, knocks you out like I want to. Clearly I loved the song because I remember it.
Yeah.
There's more to it, but basically like kind of that concept of like, I'll pray for you. But as long as we for good things to happen to you.
Yeah.
Am I aware that's not how prayer works? Absolutely. Do I care sometimes? No.
That's fine. That's fine. I mean, we're all entitled to like having those moments.
Yes. So I tend to simmer on them more to the
Yeah.
point that I will talk about them obsessively. And the people around me are like, Colleen, I love you deeply. Let it go. And I'm like, I can't.
To bring my own musical reference in.
Yes.
My queen, Taylor Swift. I forgot that you existed. Which, Taylor, I love you, but you actually wrote a song about this person, so you clearly didn't forget they existed. That's my one issue with the song.
It's funny though.
It's really funny. But that is me. Like, I completely forget a person exists. And then, like, but then I will have a moment where, like, I remember, and then I'm like, I forgot about you.
Which I think is that song.
That's true. That's
For
true.
her?
Yeah. Where she was like, all of a sudden, she was like, oh, I forgot about them. I'm going to write a song about it.
Yeah. But I'm going to do the thing that I know will bug them.
Yeah.
And let them know, which there's a lot of theories about who that song is about.
I don't know. I don't care. I love it.
I have one that I really love, and it changes. We can talk about it after the words, but it changes the way that I view the song, and I think it's funny.
Ooh, okay.
But yes.
All right.
So.
Anyways, so Feyre, you definitely overreacted, but I do think it's fair.
When she goes into, so I think I've talked about this before, but everyone has their line in the sand.
Yeah.
Of a thing that if you cross that line, they almost can't come back from it. Mine is betrayal, but not in this way.
Yeah.
But like loyalty, huge for me. If it gets to the point where like you're being controlling, which I think is kind of in that like controlling or unloyal, I would probably have blown up to the point that she did.
Yeah.
And truth is her like thing for that. So
yeah. No, I agree. Can we get into can we please talk about the sexy scene with the paint?
They're just covered in paint.
They're like painting on each other. They're completely covered. They're so covered in paint, but then they also like, but then how does that work? Because they're covered in paint everywhere. So, everywhere.
Correct. So we didn't talk about this, but the reason that she is covered in paint is because she was not using a painting palette.
Right. She
was using the table. This woman had a full mental breakdown.
She did.
She was using the table as a paint mixer palette.
Yeah.
Which might actually be the most unhinged thing that she did.
It's my favorite. I love it.
So they, do their stuff on the table.
On the table.
Which is covered in paint. They had other options. There were couches with furs there.
Yep.
They've talked about this.
Yep, but they did it on the table.
I honestly think Rhys just thought it would be funny.
I love that.
I think Rhys is just like, she likes paint.
Yeah.
Which, from an interesting standpoint, I think it also, which I think is a little bit probably why Sarah J. Maas brought it in. It kind of comes back full circle of like, she's so happy and excited. She's covered in probably red paint and other things, and she's fine.
She's great.
She's clearly moved on. She's not like living in the past as much as she was. So I think it's kind of to do with that.
Speaking of, there's this moment that we didn't talk about in chapter recap where they're like, he's like, doing things, and then he takes his finger and he paints an arrow.
Oh my gosh.
A down arrow on her stomach, and he's like, lest you forget where this is all headed.
If he wasn't so hot, it's so lame.
It's so funny. It's so funny.
Like I
but you're right, it's because he's hot.
If he was not hot, so lame. If you watched that in a movie,
oh god,
it would be awful.
Except if it was Rhys.
Yeah, I think you could be the hottest man on the planet, and I'd be like, what are you?
I would think the man has to be really hot. If they're hot enough, it would crack me up.
I mean, I think it would if he intended it to be funny.
I think he did.
I do not. He was dead serious. That man was so serious.
Well, maybe this is the Sagittarius in me, because like I can be serious but also intend to be funny at the same time.
That's fair. Well, I think being playful during that time is important, and I think it's an important part of it, and I think it should be playful if that's kind of the vibe you're going for. I don't think painting an arrow.
It's so funny, Colleen. Clearly, we disagree on this. So, like, I don't know if I would enjoy it, me personally, in the moment, but watching that happen cracks me up.
Okay, so yes, watching it happen, corny as heck.
So funny.
It feels very
middle school. No. High school?
It feels like something that Emmett would try to do to Rosalie in Twilight, and it would go really badly. That's why I couldn't stop laughing.
And he's being completely serious about it.
He's so serious, and Rosalie's like, get off of me before I rip your head off of your body. I am
Yes,
Rosalie in that moment.
You are. That's so funny.
But again, watching it, I think would be so funny and entertaining. It might take you out of the moment a little bit. It actually happening.
Note to self, when Colleen gets married, I'm going to tell her husband that specific part of the book is something that she so loves. It's so important to her, and he has to try it.
I will giggle so much.
I cannot wait to do this to your husband. I cannot wait to sabotage him. It'll be so fun.
Then I will know it was from you.
Well, yeah, that's fine. Happy wedding.
I will wait a little bit because I do think it's weird. I recently had a conversation with some people, and they were like, yeah, which they were men, and they were like, oh yeah, once I get married, have the stuff, I'm gonna immediately text my boys. And I'm like, if
Yikes.
I marry you, I think they were mostly joking.
Okay.
But I couldn't tell, and I was like, if I marry my husband and the first thing that he does is text somebody, I'm annulling my marriage.
Yeah, like absolutely not.
Immediately.
That is private.
Well, like, just talk to me about it.
Later.
I honestly could. Please talk to your bros about it.
Right.
I don't care. I'm going to talk to my girlfriends about it.
Exactly. We talk about things like that all the time, but it's never time specific.
So, yeah, I'm not going to, like... immediately.
Don't shout at me immediately, but at some point, if you come up to me and you're like, Orcha, the arrow! I'm going to be like...
If you ruin the moment, I probably will immediately text you and be like, I hate you deeply.
I won't. I'll wait a couple of weeks or months.
Don't do it on the honeymoon, please.
No.
I'm begging you.
I would not do that to you.
No, it would be kind of funny.
You just like walk into a cabin and the table is covered in paint.
Also, first of all, if my husband takes me to a cabin on our honeymoon, we are immediately getting divorced.
You're not marrying that person. That's not happening.
No.
It's empty this time, don't worry.
I would never. Not that I do love a cabin, not for a honeymoon. Unless it's a situation where we can't go anywhere else.
What about like a Swiss chalet?
That's not a cabin.
It's cabin-esque.
That's a chalet.
Yeah, I know. That's what I think of this, though. It's not really a cabin.
Fair. Oh, I grew up in the boons. When I think of a cabin, it's like a cot that creaks.
Yeah, no. This is like a cozy, like little, like...
If it's like an upper scale, I mean, it's still probably not my, like, preferable choice of the options we could have, but I'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The paint.
Took a very interesting turn
Really fun.
Also, we should clip that section.
We will clip it.
That's really funny.
We should. I'm gonna post that. It's so funny.
Okay.
What else do we have to deep dive into?
Wings.
Oh, wings.
We don't really have to get super into it. They just talk a lot about wings.
They do.
So again, we've touched on it some, and we don't have to get super deep. But like everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, the wings!" I have read some weird books before I got to this one, and like I think it's because people set the like bar clearly. For a lot of people, this was the first fantasy book they've ever read with characters that were not strictly human. Which, to me, the Fae are so human.
They're super human.
That I don't think about them, especially in this world.
Yeah.
They're very human.
They are.
Like,
I don't know. This is like my first quote-unquote romantasy type book that I've read in adulthood. But, like, the thing with the wings, it wasn't that crazy to me.
I've read a lot of, like, shifter-type romances. So, if anything, they're so human by comparison to a lot of the, like, shiftery type things that I had read. But it was my first, like, romantasy type thing. Like, the shifter romance, I think, is kind of its own. It's almost more in the, like, supernatural realm. Yeah. More than anything. But, yeah, I just never thought it was... Which I know a lot of people feel that way. And if you thought it was... I'm not trying to, like, shame anyone for being like...
No, of course not.
It's so spicy. Like, I just read... trashy books.
I thought that I did think that this book was spicy. The wing part of it all didn't faze me.
This book was spicy for the fact that it had as much plot as it had.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Because I've read books that are spicier, but
I have since read much spicier books thanks to our book clubs.
Yeah, that's fair.
But
I read a lot of fan fiction for a long time. This was a drop in the bucket compared to some of the things that people write on the internet.
That's fair.
But I never thought it was as crazy as, but again, not the shame. Everyone
No.
has their own level of what they're comfortable and not with.
I more like really enjoy all of like the reels and TikToks where it's like the boyfriend or the husband being like, very smut. They're talking about his wings. Like, what is that? I'm like, dude.
I had a slightly similar situation that happened when I took a man to a bookstore. And I was like, oh, this is a section, which was like the romance section.
Yeah.
And there is an author that we're not going to necessarily name because people have some feelings about her. Never read anything, but she has my same name.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I've not read her books. There's a lot of, we're not touching on any of that. But he like goes, oh my gosh, it's your name. And picks it up. I know what these books are about. He has no clue.
Yeah.
He opens it and just starts reading.
Oh no.
Randomly. And he just goes, and looks at me, and I was like, I haven't read that one. And then he like starts reading, because I think he starts like reading it out loud. He goes, Colleen. And I like read it, and I was like, yeah, that's not my thing.
What friend? The one
you're thinking
am
of.
mad at because he didn't talk to me.
But he also bought me a book.
Well,
he went back to that specific bookstore and said,
I'm
she
not
reads.
mad at him for you. I'm mad at him for me.
He's like, she reads these specific types of books. He's an incredible friend. If you are watching this, you know who you are. You're incredible.
You know who you are.
But yeah, he like went back to this bookstore and was like, she reads these kinds of books. What should I get her? And
No,
had the bookstore
that's like
clerk.
the sweetest thing
It
ever.
was very
It's
cute.
so cute.
Also, that book was really good. I actually got the second one and I need to read it. I haven't
Yeah.
yet. The book was very good. It was a different style of book than I was expecting. It was like an Undertaker love story thing. It was really interesting.
That's fun.
It was very good.
Yes.
But anywho, so I've had that moment. It's interesting when it happens in real time when you're not expecting it.
Yeah.
You're like, don't read that. You're not prepared to read that in public.
I will say, even though I just trashed my husband for not listening to this podcast, he does actually listen to it. He listens to us recording it, so
He is listening to us.
he
currently.
doesn't need to consume it.
Correct.
Yes. But he was, when I was preparing for one of our episodes, I was trying to write notes and we were in the car, so I just like put the audiobook on and he was just like, this is such trash. And I was like, listen, Joel.
I'm like, you're in the middle of the book. It's
Yeah,
not gonna
there's
make
no
sense.
context.
Of course it sounds trash.
Yeah. But he's not scandalized by it. He's just more like, this is such trash. Why do you like it? I'm like, you don't understand because you haven't started it from the beginning.
Yeah, jumping into the middle of this book would be
It would be trash. You have
Correct.
no understanding of any of the depth of anyone.
as to why anyone's reacting the way they
Yeah. So
do. Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anything else you want to discuss? 'Cause I think we're about an hour and a half in.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I can't think of it. I think like we've covered it
I
in
think
other
so, too.
sections.
Yeah. Well, so it's confirmed Feyre and Rhysand are mates.
We all knew.
We all knew.
We knew, but it was good to have it confirmed because
It was.
may not be.
Yeah.
Sarah's known for her twist.
She is. And it was also like I think the reason that people love these chapters so much is because you've only ever seen anything from Feyre's point of view up until chapter 54.
Which then we switch.
You get everything, and it's still technically from Feyre's point of view because she's telling it, but Rhysand is telling the story.
You get more of, which we do eventually get his POV.
We do, yeah.
Is it after this point, or is it in book 3?
I think it's in book 3.
Okay, we do get his.
Or it's at the very end of this book.
In my mind, I'm thinking I actually have been anticipating it happening sooner.
It's like the last chapter of this book, and
Is
then
it?
in book 3.
And then in book 3,
yeah.
which I actually like Reese's POV
Me
a
too.
lot.
Yeah.
I love different POVs.
Me
It's one of my
too.
favorite
I enjoy
styles
it.
of books because then you get to see a lot more depth of character that you can't get from just audio.
Yeah,
verbal
no,
combos.
I agree. And then, like, I think we've covered it, but then, like, even chapter 55, even though it's all just, sex.
Spicy content, yeah.
But it's like so, it's more than that. It's very intimate.
It doesn't feel vulgar.
Yeah.
The point of it is not to put them in there to show vulgarity
Yeah.
or to be, like, salacious. The point is they're two people in love who are married in their worlds and engaging in the activities that you do with that.
Yep. So I think that's why people connect so much with these two chapters. And I get it. We've talked about how the Hewn City one is like way hotter for us.
Correct.
And the one bed trope was so good.
One bed.
Only one bed. But
yeah, there were multiple beds in this cabin and they chose none of them.
That's true. They chose 0 beds.
They chose the least soft option.
Why?
I'm still mad about it.
It's fine.
If I was Feyre, I'd be mad about it.
Yeah. So that's
all
it. Coming up, I have now posted about this.
Yes, we're so
we
excited.
are going to be talking to MK Pagano this weekend
We're
about
so
Girls Who Burn.
excited.
It's going to be amazing.
Yes.
We'll definitely keep you guys posted because I don't think that we have decided when we're posting our first duology.
Yeah, we're recording it soon.
Yes.
Yeah, we got some stuff that we have to do
Yeah.
before we can post it. but
Yes.
We're excited.
But it's going to be amazing.
Yes.
So, all right, we will see you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye.